Business Takeout presents
The Cocktale Hour with L.A. Wade.
That was off. Something was off there, Banky. I don't know what was going on, but welcome to the Cocktale Hour, courtesy of Business Takeout, a social entrepreneurship program that helps to educate and empower Black wealth and Black entrepreneurs. Today, I am joined with Dr. Warren Clarke. And Warren, it's so nice to have you here with us. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day to you. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Yes, you don't have to be very doctor-like on this show. This is where, I mean, otherwise I'll have to call you Dr. Clarke and things will get
No.
No, but you worked very hard to be a doctor. So tell us about who you are, what you believe in, and why you believe it.
Who was Warren? Talking about him in the third person. He is I am him. You know, I was inspired by that halftime show yesterday, the Super Bowl. So
really
saying he is I and I am him because Snoop Dogg, right? But anyways, who's Warren? I think it's fair to say that I am a humbled person. I don't pride myself on being the person who's a smart person, smarter than, or wanting to be smarter than. I'm a person who loves learning. I love to be able to learn from different facets of life. If it's through speaking to people or sharing a moment that you and I are having right now, that's meaningful. I'm one to understand when to take space, but when to make space, which is really important. And I think when I lead that way, I found that I've had better outcomes with people and building better relationships. What I believe in is a sense of reciprocity. You know, I stress that word more than I think anybody I've met. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's just a thing. And I believe in the sense of balance as reciprocity. For those who are listening, what I mean by reciprocity, it's a mutual understanding, a way to know when to give and when to receive. And I think that's really important for a lot of how we can build relationships and meaningful relationships. So that's me in a nutshell.
but you didn't say why you believe it.
Why I believe in it? Oh, sorry. I'll have to give credit to my mentor who passed away a couple of years ago. Jim Hayer Sr., he's always in my heart. And, having a lot of moments with him and learning how he gave back to community and, how he led with a heart on his shoulder and his sleeve, figuratively and respectfully saying, is part reason why I believe it, right? Like I was indoctrinated under the Hearst regime, if I'm respectfully saying, right? Like he was a very inspirational person to me, particularly in my, my graduate school years. And, another reason why I believe it is, is working with the community, and being able to lead in moments where I was allowed to lead, and also follow, right? Like when you know that you can build sustainable relationships with people you just meet and they turn into long-lasting relationships. That sense of reciprocity, the foundation of what I believe is I owe it to that. So.
Okay, so I think that this conversation will kind of follow who you are, what you believe in, and why it's important. And I think that will help the Black entrepreneurs and the people that are interested in building Black wealth get information that they can put in what I would call the cocktail bar, but probably they would be like their toolbox. And so who you are as Dr. Warren Clarke, because you talked about mentorship, which and really goes well in the reciprocity section. So let's just focus a little bit more on who you are in actuality. How I know you is as a fitness person, so somebody who's very dedicated to their fitness. I know you as a passionate community builder, and I first knew you as a PhD student. Now you are a doctor. And so those are the people that I know that make up who you are. Would you tell us a little bit about those people, but also if I don't know another part of you that speaks to who you are, please enlighten us.
So I think I'll start leading, and thank you for that. Much appreciated. I'll use the inroad here to speak about my community building, right? And you know, I've always been in the community. I've always been working the capacity as a mentor, a leader in training, to employment coach, right? I've had those roles, and one of the things that inspires me is being able to pay it forward, right? Like, when we come to know what we know, is the question is, how do you even know what you know? Where does it come from? And my sense of knowing is, okay, well, it doesn't necessarily manifest for me first. It came from someone historically. And my way of knowing that is, well, if it came from me and I took it from someone else, well, I should give it to someone else. And then seeing that knowledge transition or being adopted by other people, in a way that doesn't do harm, and it's not a way for me to colonize their experience, is a way for me to judge it for myself, to know that I'm doing something that's meaningful.
I love it. I love that.
I appreciate that, and and also the opportunity for me to speak my truth, right? And that keeps me motivated. Warren, the PhD. Oh man.
Wait, before you jump to the
sorry.
it made me think about when you said in the beginning about how you make space and take space. And so almost like the theme of who you are really is reciprocity. It's reciprocal from how you see yourself, how you see your relationships, and how you see the larger community in the world. That really seems like something that would be who you are.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And like, one of the things that I really appreciate is this business takeout, and it's how to empower black entrepreneurs or business minded people. Is one of the things is we are African descent people, regardless of if you want to use that term BIPOC or what have you. We have our own histories, we have our own knowledge, and we have an opportunity. We have a duty for those who have the ability to have a certain social status, which gives us titles of doctors, CEOs. We have an opportunity to pay it back to our community. And I say that to then start acknowledging the land we situate ourselves on. We got to think about what Canada is and what Canada is not. And what Canada is the white settler colonial nation state. And a lot of things we know through this settler moment is through that white lens. And we got to keep in mind that, there's an opportunity to actually start to develop an understanding of self and who we are without keeping that lens in front of us, that on those glasses that we continue to see through, that creates an image of self.
Oh, how do we do that? Because as the type of educator that you are, I see the power of education in helping us both, purposely learning about how to culturally shift that, and then kind of like the manifest and latent, so to speak. Like, you do something because structurally or systemically this will make a change and it will have a direct impact. But in doing that latently, what happens in the relational side of really learning how to educate ourselves in the cultural latent space? That's why I like film and television.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I thank you for saying that, right? And I will add value by saying it's about resistance. If we think of, like, for those who are moviegoers out there, the last Matrix, we won't say anything there, but the first Matrix.
We always talk about the first Matrix.
Yeah, on the first one. I'm not gonna make a comment on the last one, like, right? But the first Matrix was an example of resistance, right? If we're really paying attention. And I only bring up the moment where Neo was to choose the red pill or the blue pill, right? Yeah. And in that moment, we noticed a moment of resistance from Neo, because he was resisting the Matrix. He was resisting what he was being told. He was resisting to try to understand new levels of knowledge and understanding of self. Yes. Understanding of self, right? And then, you think about those moments in terms of how do we understand self, is you have to try to resist. That the moment of resistance is not a negative. The moment of resistance is also an opportunity to be open-minded to adopt new knowledge. But it's also an understanding that knowledge is infinite, and knowledge is also continuing. If you think on the spectrum of that, then you also think that your resistance is never negative. Your resistance is actually appreciating yourself, right? Like, for instance, I've resisted from, cutting my hair. I was cutting my hair. So now
you had very long, beautiful locks.
Thank you. Right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And then I cut them off, and then I was, doing the whole fade and, the whole Usher try look. And no, I'm just ignoring. But and now I'm doing my hair again. So I'm resisting, but also adopting new ways of understanding myself. What style fits Warren's look, this year or what have you, right? So I think this, the moment of resistance in our, our Black communities, particularly community building, is not a bad thing, right? It's just how do we resist this narrative? I mean, in terms of this ideology of colonialism that that shapes a lot of us, our understanding of who of ourselves.
Yes, and I would hope that you right now could speak to the different forms. I mean, there's many, but some forms that people can take in the form of resistance, because like right now the convoy is causing a lot of like drama, but it doesn't always, resistance doesn't have to always look like that, or your fist in the air, or et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
There are other ways to resist, and especially those of us who are in positions of power, we negotiate and navigate our social space in a very particular way in order to maintain a trajectory in our quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to resisting, and if that's the space that you occupy, what are some ways in which you can resist?
Well, good question, right? And I want to just add more value to what you're saying here. The conversation is not to resist, as you mentioned, be physical, beat somebody up. That's not where we're going. The concept is very philosophical, right? And saying, right, and resisting the sense of and the urgency to then train yourself or encourage self to learn. I know I repeat that, but I was reading some work from Dr. George Safadeh recently. And we spoke about his own resistance to the ideology of white settler colonial ideology. His vulnerability in his work was an inroad on how he is trying to understand self in the moment of continuous learning. Right.
That is so important for me to know. And the reason for me personally is because Dr. Day was my master's advisor. I don't know if you knew that or not. And I would say that any work that he's doing now that reveals a vulnerability, I would almost bet that vulnerability didn't really exist before, especially as a Black man in academia. How you present yourself, even through the word, much less how you look, it can also be an act of resistance, I would think.
Yeah, right. And I want to add something. You say something really important to our discussion right now in terms of race and masculinity in academia. It's not to say Black women don't share the same barriers and challenges in academia, because they're very similar, but respectfully different.
Right.
But this sense of resistance, a colleague of mine said, Warren, we have honorary whiteness. And I said, what does that mean? Honorary whiteness. And,
100.
Right. And, for those who are listening, it's not to say Warren is a white man. That's not what I'm saying. we have the entitlement and closer and proximity. That's using L.A. Wade's notion of proximity to whiteness because of our social status. Right. We have, I can access, certain resources that some Black men cannot. Right. I can, do more, I say do more respectfully based on my social status that some Black men cannot.
Right.
I think we have to acknowledge that proximity to whiteness that we have. But in saying that, here comes the oxymoron to that proximity to whiteness comes with a cost.
Yes.
Because we cannot resist at certain times within the academic space. We can't resist because it connects to our livelihood, capitalism, economic empowerment for ourselves. It comes to our academic freedom.
It's like a mandated vaccine.
Well,
let's not go there.
Well, I'm just not going to comment on that, right? But I appreciate what you're saying. But we have to find, I know we're going to talk about other subtopics we spoke about before going on, but it does speak to how we can navigate within those systems and how sometimes it's difficult to navigate within those systems. Because as much as I speak, encouraging this resistant topic, there's different social barriers or social, moments that it's very difficult to resist. But it's all about learning through those moments, right? And if you're of mind to start understand who self is, then you're on that journey for a long-lasting life of learning of self. So
Right.
I'll stop there for a moment and take a moment of pause.
Oh, well, thank you. But totally not necessary, because I usually sit at your foot and let the crumbs fall to me.
No, 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 please, no.
I'm just kidding. Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of that, when you talked about the resistance and saying that sometimes you cannot and that it comes at a cost, how do you navigate as a man? How do you navigate when you recognize that there's a cost to the choices you're making in any given point of potential resistance?
I really appreciate how you framed as a man, because this whole concept of manhood, which is, it's been a discussion for years, histories. It's been a historical conversation. Sorry.
Yeah.
There's this idea that as men we have to be tough. We have to be we have to be breadwinners. We have to be the one that's outspoken. We have to be strong. We have to be all these things that are stereotypical, of self it connects to being a man, right? And
Yes.
then we have to connect that and let's be forthcoming here with this conversation. When we talk about manhood, we're talking about white men.
Yeah.
When I say manhood, we're not talking about black men.
Right. And you have to make that distinction.
Exactly. And when we start talking about black men, you have to preface that with black men, because white men and black men don't share the same lived experiences. Yes. We know this through different mediums of understanding self, right?
Well, not only, the closest one to that is the black woman and the white woman in the feminist movement. They had to make that distinction because what black women were going through were not the same thing as white women. And so therefore, to join a movement that had not considered some of the things that the black woman also would want from a movement that powerful, and it wasn't acknowledged, well, then really, how could we align ourselves with that type of movement? And I would think that men are in this period right now of making a distinction of their own.
Yeah, and I appreciate. Yeah, I want to comment on that. And I appreciate you saying, and to add value to the feminism talk you mentioned, Bell Hooks, God rest her soul, rest in peace. She wrote extensively on black feminism thought. Patriarchal Collins, who's still among us, who continues down that, Kimberly Crenshaw. So there's many people who's talking about black feminist thought, but in conjunction back to the question in terms of men or black men resisting, I think it's also understanding of resisting that main or general concept, of what masculinity means. We have to separate ourselves from that concept. I think it's important too. It's not to separate ourselves to say we're better or worse, but separate us to start understanding what race means with our being as men, right? And I think when we start doing that, we can start thinking through how we can resist moments of misogyny.
Yeah, well, I like that.
How can we resist moments of being patriarchal? Because when we talk about misogyny and patriarchal, that's white men, right? We adopt that through that white lens to some degree. I'm only saying from a white settler Western context, okay?
You definitely learned it from them.
Yes, we learned it from them. And I'm troubling the work of Fanon here. Franz Fanon. I'm troubling the work of even Dr. George Safadeh speaks. He troubles that. And yes, when we talk about misogyny, it doesn't just nest within Canada or nest within the white settler moment, right? That extends outside of Western cultures. It does, and I want to acknowledge that. But when we talk about our locale as black men, we have to consider who we are and how we do things, right? Particularly when we align ourselves with whiteness, through capitalism, through community building, through any venture that you think of. So it's really important to acknowledge how we can resist those moments of being a version of manhood that doesn't necessarily or need to apply to us. So that's where I would. Information.
Yes. And I use that as a really great segue into the panel that you have me facilitating on February 25th, because I believe it's within those nuances that we are going to have a great discussion around Black love as a starting point. Did you ever see the Nikki, Giovanni, and James Baldwin conversation? And that very poignant place where she talks about, to come at home and to treat her like that stuff didn't happen to him outside.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, if you're going through what you're going through in the community and you are being beaten down, and then you come home and your mate is basically asking you to act like that isn't happening in your life. And so where then becomes the space for you to be? And I think one of the most loving things that you can do in Black love is to provide space for one another. Anyway, you'll get more of that at our panel, but can you speak more about what that is, what panel I'm talking about, what it's couched in, and why you thought it was necessary to put a Black love panel within that particular workshop?
Thank you. I'll start by saying it wasn't my idea.
Was it a woman's idea?
Yeah, pardon me?
Was it a woman's idea?
Was it a woman's idea, you asked?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That wasn't my idea. That wasn't me.
That proves nothing, but I'm just saying.
Shout out to Tanya Van Loo. That was her idea. And, I follow her lead. She's a brilliant Black woman in Montreal. Shout out to Tanya Van Loo and the Van Loo family out there. One of the things that, when we were talking about creating this discussion of Black love was understand the degrees of Black love and understanding that Black love doesn't mean one way, but one way it does mean, and way we can encourage, is giving space, right, as you mentioned, right? And just by telling someone you love them is not enough, right. It's about the practice of, right? But how do you, today's Valentine's Day, right? Telling your mate or telling your friend that it's Valentine's Day shouldn't be your only acknowledgement to love them. You should be loving them every day, right? Like, think about it. You're human beings, right? Like, you don't have to use the word love to love someone. You just don't, right? And I think a lot of people, are that's a misconception. Like how you can show love. Yeah, how you can show love is appreciate, listen. When you see your partner or your friend, in need, extend that olive branch. Even if it's like, how can I help you? Even if you don't know, sometimes just by saying, I don't know how, but I want to try, is giving space. It's enough, right? But the part of love is communication. Communication, not words. Body language is part of that as well.
Tone.
Tone. Even people are talking about love languages. That is a thing.
There's
right?
apology languages also.
There is, and the vulnerability.
Yeah.
In that, being vulnerable is not a bad thing.
But it takes a lot of trust of self to be vulnerable, and trust of the other, trust of God, trust of the process. That's a shout out to Jonna Van Zandt, who specifically writes about those 4 ways of trust and how it really can impede upon specifically Black people based on how we all came to be. It's a big order that we think should be simple for people to do. And obviously it is not.
Yeah, it's challenging. And I appreciate you saying that. And, part of the ways is how we understand love, many of us, and it doesn't only derive in our Black communities, but many other communities, is, we show love in ways that could be harmful, right? And we don't think through, because one, we either weren't taught, or 2, we think that, by giving this certain sense of love, we'll get it back. And that right there is a negative sense of reciprocity, right? It's essentially what you're saying to is like, hey, because I love you this way, I should get it back automatically, right? But because there was no communication, and I'm going to go somewhere here. So folks, if you're listening, hang on to your seats, because boy, sometimes, all right, hang on to your seats, right? Like, how explicit can I be on this show? This first off.
Absolutely explicit. This is the Cocktale Hour. It's not the other shows.
All right. All right. So, here's the thing, right? Some people will say, like, I should receive love based on what I do for my partner. Let's talk about oral sex for a second. All right. Okay. So when you go down on your partner, some people are like, particularly men do this a lot, right? Like, I've talked to a lot of men. It's like, well, if I give you head, then automatically you should give me head. Yes, where is that written in any rule? But before and it has to do with people being courageous enough to have open conversations to get to that step, right? Think about what I'm saying here.
Because it's still an important question to have to be able to tackle as a couple.
Exactly, right? Like, how do you know this person who you're going to share with is the one for you? Even if you are thinking through like, hey, maybe this is like maybe a couple nights or whatever, how do you know those couple nights are going to complement what you want?
Yeah.
Right? And the only way you know is to say, hey, this is me, Warren. This is what I like. This is the things that I subscribe to. This is my love language. And I'm going to tell you this and trusting that we can build a relationship of solidarity, which speaks to balanced reciprocity. Because then you're going to give that person an option to critically think, be like, okay, he says he wants this way. I have never done it that way. Maybe I want to explore that way by asking him another question, such as, can you teach me? Or can you do this? Or can I do that? Like, there's no negotiation, right? It just goes straight to like, hey, I think you look a certain way. I'm going to bring my unconscious bias of what I know about a man or a black man, and then I'm just going to superimpose that on you and think you're going to give it to me, right? It doesn't work that way, right? Like, and going back, and not to be dominating this conversation here from right now, but it goes back to this Black Love panel, right? Like, how, like, we've had folks in the past who've been together, 15, 20 years. How did you do that? Like how did you get there, right? And it was a moment of reflection for a lot of for the panelists to say, well, to be honest with you, it wasn't easy. There was moments like I wanted to rip his head off, or there was moments where I slept in my car the night because I couldn't figure it out. But one thing that they kept saying, all of them unanimously, is that they came back to the table and they renegotiated, or they recommunicated, or they brought up something because it wasn't settling, and they said, please listen to me. Or the person said, when is a good time for us to talk? Like, it's all about communication, right?
Absolutely.
It's not, everybody's not going to say the things that you want to hear.
But also, yes, but I would say even more to that, which I think is brilliant, is that we have to give permission to push those boundaries, and we need to see healthy examples, because just because we know what we should do doesn't mean we know how to do. And that's why the panelists that I've selected for our conversation are examples of healthy interactions in terms of what relationships could potentially look like. And when we bring up topics that have to do with what you're talking about, how they address it, or how they interact within those realms, so that we have examples. And one couple is a polyamorous couple, while the other couple is a monogamous, very Christian-based mono relationship. And I think that's also important because our communities are changing, which is, what is this? We're talking about something that's coming up on February 25th. So what is it, and how does this topic fit into it? I think that's important here.
How, are you asking how this topic fits into what we're talking about generally today?
No, not today. In the conference that we're doing on the 25th. What's it called? Okay.
So, well, you bring up how that fits in is because some of what you mentioned, you have a polyamorous couple, for example, which is viewed as taboo in many, Black communities or among Black folk, right?
I don't know if you know, but I do taboo. That's my thing.
well, good. We need to focus on the taboo, and I think the correlation of having a Christian couple, that sets the other tone. It shows that there's different ways of loving people, and it's okay, right? Like, the thing is, we're not honest sometimes. We're just not. And I'm not going to talk about my past. I'm not doing that. But
no, we don't need to know about your past.
I'll say I learned, right? I'll say that, right? And pardon?
May I ask, what is the name of the event on February 25th?
Oh, it's the 4th annual Afro-Caribbean Mentorship Program, Black History Month event. And we have the Honorable High Commissioner of Barbados, Glenn Clarke. Yes, there is relation there.
Okay.
Speaking, and then we also have the Honorable Greg Fergus, MP, Liberal Party. And then we also have Michelle Jean-Paul, who is a superintendent in the school board out in the Prairies. So good lineup. And then also we have L.A. Wade, who's going to be leading the Black Love panel discussion. So we have a good lineup. It's going to be a lot of empowering Black businesses as well. We have Black businesses who've submitted commercials. We're going to be playing commercials. Yes, I said it, commercials. So if you are a Black business and you want to get your business highlighted for a 30 to 60-second reel, please get at me, and I'll share the email address at the end of the segment.
Does it cost anything?
Zero.
To promote your business, it costs nothing.
Zero money to promote your business on this event. Zero.
Wow. People are going to be kicking themselves when they watch this in repeat and it's past.
Hey, don't sleep.
Exactly. Watch the Cocktale Hour every Monday at 5 p.m. and you won't miss these gems that are being dropped. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back. So you were talking, let's go into how does Black love fit into the theme? You have all of these honorables coming. So why is it important to include Black love on this type of panel, on this type of work conference?
Good question. And just to, I want to say a celebration, not conference, not so academic conference, right?
It's not an academic thing.
So this the celebration is it's a different way of acknowledging Black experiences, right? Like, it's not only through business, it's not only through a keynote address, it's not only looking at what Warren's Tim's are matching his jacket because Warren's got
got to have that. I know.
It's about it's also about understanding how we can appreciate self, how we can appreciate others, right? So it's we try our best through the last 4 years with the ACNP Black History Month event to give a different taste of how we can appreciate our Black experiences in our Canadian moment, right? Like, it's through spoken word. We're gonna have Jamal the poet, who's an awesome poet in the Ottawa region. If you don't know now, you know, who's going to be giving some insight of poetry, right? Like, we have youth speakers. We've had youth speakers in previous years. Ellie, you remember the last time we hosted the Black History Month? We had about 600-700 people in attendance, right? And we had a youth fashion show, right? So we try our best to acknowledge that there's not one way to appreciate Black people, Black Canadians, past and present. And then what's also important, sorry, I forgot, which is important as well, for those who are in school, we are giving away book bursaries. So if your GPA is up and you want to attempt or be one of the people to potentially be selected for a bursary, please email us. Get at us.
Is this across the nation, or is it just to the province of Ontario or Quebec or Manitoba?
Across the nation. You tell us you're in school. We want to. We're not made of money. We do what we can, but if we have the support of RBC, which we do, Carleton University, University of Ottawa, let's try and build, right? This is not about Warren, right? Like, this is about us.
Yeah, which is a great segue for when we go back to how you became the doctor. I think this is a good place to begin for your story of why you believe in the things that you do, but also like what you believe in, which is community building, which is that reciprocity piece, and it not being about Warren. And as a community builder, there's this fine difference that I want to talk about specifically for our entrepreneurs, is that you are an implementer, whereas I would consider myself more of a visionary, and then I have to get the people to help me implement. You're very much, you can hear something and understand exactly the execution of making that thing become a reality. So can you talk to how that makes up who you are and what you believe in? And then I think it will automatically reveal why you believe in it. Yeah.
I want to start by pointing to social capital, right? And why I'm pointing to social capital is because a lot of what I know, it was about the experience with other people and with them showing and teaching and guiding, but leading by example, right? I brought up my mentor, Jim Hayer, Sr., who passed away. I tell you, I studied that guy back, up and down, left and right. There was moments where if I was up late writing a paper and I was like, what would Hearst do? That's what we used to call him, Hearst, right? And I just, go to his website. I'll just read it. Even though I read it like 20 times, I'd read it. And, I remember one time I called him one summer. It was like in third year of grad school, and I said I had this crazy idea, well, positive idea, to do something in the community. I was like, Hurst, I got this idea. I think I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to build it this way, and I want to do this. I want to do that. And he sat there while I was rambling for about half an hour. I kid you not. And he said to me, he's like, Warren, I can't teach you anymore. Like you've done it, right? And I didn't know. Even this day, I'm getting goosebumps on my body. I still don't know if I've made that, that point where he said I've reached. And I say that because I was so fortunate to be a part of his circle.
Yes.
And gave me the enlightenment, encouragement, and initiative to focus on how I can do for self and for community, because I learned so much from him, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I start there is because I have to pay it forward. I have to give it back. You know what I mean? Like, why I do things is because I believe that doing things in a way where it's going to help humanity is the best way for me and to see the better result for people. That's why I do it. Like I love to see people win. I don't need to win because I'm a doctor. I don't need to win all the time. Why can't LA Wade win? Why
Absolutely. But here's sorry not to interrupt you, but this is a really important connection that I want to make with you becoming the doctor and how you saw yourself and how your mentor saw you. So now you're here as being a doctor and you see yourself a certain way. And then, but when you were becoming a doctor, you saw yourself a certain way. And then your mentor saw you in a particular way. And those three things kind of is an interesting interplay in the becoming of who you are now. And I reference a Christian reference of Simon to Peter and how much Simon acted like Simon because he didn't yet see himself as Jesus saw him, which is why he would reference him as Peter, but he was still Simon for a period of time. And when he becomes Peter, it's an interesting evolution in him as a man, in him as a spiritual being. There's a confidence that comes. And I wonder if you now as doctor are able, you referenced you weren't quite there yet, but in this analogy, maybe it helps you see yourself in a new way now that you are here as doctor.
No, to be honest with you, no.
You still see yourself as a becoming of the doctor.
Well, not become of the doctor, like that's achieved, right? But in terms of have I made something and I'm at this point of like I've made it? No.
Do you feel like you have to earn something?
No. I'm in. If I'm gonna even feel that way, I'm in a competition with myself. I really don't look at anybody to compete with, right? Like,
So where are you still thirsty then?
I'm thirsty because I'm alive. I'm thirsty because I get to wake up, God willing, every day. Like I'm thirsty because I got a young little girl that looks at me and says, "Daddy, I'm better than you," and I want her to be better than me.
Better than you?
Well, she says she's the boss, so that like that motivates me, right? Like to see I've got two doctoral students that I'm working with now, and one of the things that motivates me is to just read their work. Like I'm so interested in their minds, right? And it's like I try not to be that supervisor who's like, oh, like you need to be doing it this way and writing it this way, and I try not to be that overpowering person, but just reading how they're developing, it's such a beautiful thing, right? So I sit here and I'm like, yeah, I'm a doctor, whatever, but I'm able to continue to learn and grow, right? Like I read an article yesterday, last night. I sat and just read this article, and I was like, this is awesome. I haven't even read an article in so long, because when you're writing your dissertation, you're just reading and writing, right? So I just sat down and I was like, wow, great experience, right? Like, and I'm sitting like a kid in a candy shop, like a nerd that I am. But anyways, point of reference is that I am so excited about just seeing Warren tomorrow and seeing Warren in 10 years and seeing Warren down the future and be like, darn, man, like there's so much to do. There's so much to accomplish for me. So it's like, I'm never full. I'm never full.
I think you're never full because you're always filling. That's why you're never full. It's almost like if there's a hole somewhere, you give out through the sides or wherever the holes are so that you're constantly filling it up. And then it's simultaneously coming out of you. And I think that your mentor saw that in you, which is why you would be a part of his circle, because I venture to say that that's how he lived.
Yeah, you're dead on, right? Like, and this brings us to the point of another point of the conversation where it's important to have the right people around you.
Yes.
Right? Like, I don't give this knowledge just to anybody.
Why not?
It works that way, right? Because here's the thing, right? Here's the oxymoron, folks. If you're listening, listen carefully. I can give you this information, but you won't get it. But if I don't give it to you, you won't get it.
I like it.
Right? But the thing is, you only get it if it's meant for you.
Right.
I can tell anybody this information. It's not that it's not like I hide anything. No, I'll tell you.
Yes.
But if it's only up to you, if you want it. If you think about the movie Doctor Strange, the first Doctor Strange movie that came out.
Yes.
You got to a point of like, no, I don't want this. Like, I can heal my hands on my own. Sorry, my daughter's calling. I don't know why she decides to do that. But anyways,
it's okay.
He thought he can, heal his hands his own. But then he came into a man in the movie. I remember he said, you got to go to Kamatash or wherever you have to go. And it's only until he met the High Master where he was like, teach me more. But a lot of people get to that point and they don't believe, or they don't see the connection, how it fits for them. Right. So they will tell you the truth. I can tell you the truth all day, but doesn't mean you're going to side with my truth. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the message, right. Because some people just aren't ready. Some people just don't want to tune in, and that's okay. Or
it's not purpose for them at that time. That's all.
That's okay, right? Yeah. So, it's not about that. Again, I'm not hiding information. It's not that I have a duty. I'm an educator. That's my duty, is to educate, right? So it goes with my students. It goes to my daughter. How many times have I told my daughter, "Hey, this is what I think. It's totally up to you. I'm telling you what I think you should do." It's like, "Well, Dad, I'll do it the other way." I'm like, "Well, okay." And then she comes back, she's like, maybe I should have done the other way. I was like, "Well, let's talk about it." Right?
Has it ever been the other way around where you were like, "Oh, she knew what she was doing there"?
Yeah, 100%.
So make sure you tell her, because that's how we can also help our community heal, is reinforcing and self-acknowledgement, especially to our children. I think is very powerful.
But I think one thing, if you don't mind me saying,
definitely not.
Parents like yourself, LA, who have seen you in action, respectfully, I've seen a lot of a friend of mine who's on Scarborough. You start from when you're young. Like a lot of you gotta start when you're right when they start understanding. You got to, Like, for example, my little girl, we have a chant every day. I don't care how repetitive it sounds. Are you beautiful? Yes. Are you smart? Yes. Are you queen in the making? Yes. Every phone call. Because if I can indoctrinate her to that degree of understanding, then she'll start believing it psychologically.
Yes.
Right? And that's
also in her practice where she does it and then say, look, you said you're becoming the queen. You're making queen movements right now. Keep that up. Like, reinforcing the behavior that moves them in the direction that we want them to go in is 100%. So powerful. 100%. Now that's a Black love topic, how 100%. To love our children and raise them in this generation.
I agree. And don't let the state raise your kids. No. Oh my goodness. If you want, folks, I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, we have sometimes an over-dependence on letting the state raise our kids. An over-dependence. I saw it during the pandemic, and it was not only just the Black community, but a lot of community members.
Everyone's affected.
When schools shut down, I saw people go on the news like, I don't know what to do with my kid. What? What do you mean I don't know what to do with your kid? What do you mean you don't know what to do with your kid? Pick up a book, read to your kid. You should be doing that before. You should have been doing that.
I think the pandemic revealed a lot of things to people that were in their blind spots as a society. A societal blind spot.
And the other thing it revealed is that capitalism is straining us. We have to work the 2-3 jobs, some of us. We have to make decisions that we don't want to make because of our economic circumstances.
Yeah.
Folks, particularly, and I say this, and you know what? Maybe this will resonate with some people. Maybe it won't, or maybe I trust it won't do harm. When my parents were talking to me, and maybe a lot of Black people watching today, or whatever you watch this, our parents used to say, or my parents used to say, go to school and learn, right?
Yeah.
But not
pick up a book and read.
But not come up with what am I going to school and learn? What is it? Am I going to be a doctor? Am I going to be a lawyer? What is it? What profession do you want me to learn here? Right? It was just so up in the air, But I think we can build off that. I think we need to encourage more of our Black youth to start seeing the relevance of education. We really do, right?
And also just stop presenting education one-dimensionally.
Thank you. Thank you.
Education is so much more than that, especially experiential education.
I agree, right? We have to also consider, when we're telling our kids or our young teenagers or young adults to go be an entrepreneur, whose wallets are getting filled.
Yeah. How do you feel it? Let's start there.
Gotta be careful with these, the government, these banks are coming out with these Black loans and whatnot. We have to be mindful of how we're attracting ourselves to these loans. We have to ensure that we don't need to go be a doctor. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is get enough information. You understand how you can make informed decisions. Understand how you met money management before you just take money, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's something called interest. There's something called a deadline, and people want their money. Right. So you keep those in consideration.
Okay, so just as we're winding down closer to the end than we were to the beginning, we've learned about who you are. About what you believe in, and we now know why you believe in it, and we also know that you still thirst for the filling of your cup until it's empty, and so that's really cool to know about you. But in terms of the fundamentals of the business of what you're doing, you're an educator, you're a community builder, but you've attached a business to it, even though if it is not for profit. Now, the idea of that, building the not for profit and funding the not-for-profit. Can you speak about how you make that happen?
Yeah, I was either really smart or really stupid.
Tell me more.
What I mean is when I went into adventure to build this Afro-Caribbean mentorship program, I did it my first year of grad school. So I didn't take an exam. I didn't do anything. All I did was I showed up, I took a couple courses, and here I am building a non-for-profit. And, and I'll say this, there's a need, right? And a lot of even my experience as a graduate student, even undergraduate student, there's no space, there's no support for learners in academia.
Right.
There's this perceived misconception of support. So, for example, we have the Writing Center, but who's there to actually really acknowledge that I'm actually a Black student who's, have my own cultural differences? Like, who's there to support that? Or, hey, I'm going through a tough time. Oh, go see the mental health counselors. Well, I'm actually a Black student who has different, there is no support. So when I started the Afro-Caribbean Mentorship Program with undergraduates, respectfully, who helped put that together, it was acknowledging that need and that moment of pause within the university space to say, let's focus on what anti-Black racism is doing here, right? Yes. It's impeding these learners' ability to learn. It's impeding these learners' ability to even stay within the academic space, because you don't stay for free. This is not elementary school.
Right.
And we have to consider that, okay, if we're gonna think through this moment from supporting and mentoring Black students, we have to ensure they get from point A to point B, even if it's right through their to graduate school. So, in putting together this program, it was tough, and one of the toughest ways is trying to convince institutions, universities, to just sign in on this, right? Like this idea is something that's going to help us champion anti-Black racism, but also appreciate Black learners in this space that is white settler colonial, entrenched white settler colonialism, right? So the amount of no's that I received in the beginning was, we'll just say it was a lot.
More no's than yeses.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? A no, not all no's are not every response is going to be a no, right? And one thing that helped me was aligning myself with people and organizations that, saw the vision, or believed in the vision, right? And even if it was $1, that was enough for me to do something, right? Until it got to the ears of big investors or financial supporters, such as the World Bank of Canada, where they're like,
how did that happen? How'd you go from getting people doing smaller contributions to now you are being funded by a bank?
Yeah, one of the things is be excited about your work, folks. If you're not excited, don't do it. Don't do it, right? As much as I said, if I was either stupid or smart, I was excited about it, right?
Yes.
You have to be able to go out there and just like, yo, this is the best thing ever. Like, why aren't you on it, right? But with context. Don't just be like, this is the best thing ever, full stop. Like, people are like,
why is it the best thing ever?
Right? Like, you have to be convinced yourself that this thing is the best thing ever, and here's why.
And
right?
Is that in writing, or were you able to make an oral presentation? How does it work?
To be honest with you, it was a lot of what I do is word of mouth. A lot of what I do is like I'll speak somewhere and I'm in the right place, right time, and it's like I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you further, right? And position yourself that way as an entrepreneur or NPO or a director of NPO is the best way to go.
Right.
I'll even lean to some mentorship I received from a mentor who I've never said this to, but she's a mentor, Station Frederick. If you know Station Frederick on Toronto, shout out to Station. She's doing big things, been doing big things, right? And one of the things with her organization, Braids for AIDS, she was very loud, right? Like if you didn't know Braids for AIDS, like why don't you know, right? And those moments of being able to sit on her board and seeing how she navigated systems and just being courageous and just loud in a positive way, not the destruction of Black women. That's not what I'm saying, but positive, courageous way. Yeah, people twist your words. You gotta just fill those gaps in. But anyways, in a courageous way, it was, that's what you got to be. And to answer your question, and I know we're running out of time, but how that World Bank relationship started was them not only finding out who Warren is, but seeing the track record. Right, I did it the opposite way. Right, I did it with little to no money, to not really. I didn't even apply for grants. It was just like, okay, who can I grab to put in $1,000 here, $100 here, and it just turned into something that was bigger. And then relying on community to help support me showing up, and then numbers speak for themselves. When you've got 100 people, 200 people come to your events, 500 people, you're gonna make noise. Someone's gonna be like, "Whoa, what's going on over there?" Right? So that's how Royal Bank got involved, and to this day, we have a really good relationship. Look forward to doing more work in the future.
How long from when you started till Royal Bank jumped in?
The second year.
Oh, so you have a long wait. So when you spoke about your track record, I would only assume it wasn't only just the work you did in that space. But it were other things that you did, like barbershop talk and Theater of the Oppressed. I read a little bit about that. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So as much as I am, focusing on our Black communities, particularly Black young men in my research, I am an advocate for anti-oppression, anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion frameworks, right? And a course that I developed at Carleton University was race, gender, and sexuality through the arts. So we focused on how do we dispel homophobia, regardless of what a race you are, and how do we dispel anti-Black racism or Islamophobia? So, that course was tied with a high school out in Ottawa, Glebe Collegiate. So shout out to Glebe Collegiate high school students. Yeah. Right. And we were able to focus on Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed model to then create these community initiatives or events, or one event, sorry, or there were multiple events, but one day events we were to do this sense of improv to then encourage people to think through what social oppression is and what it isn't, and how we can focus as a community to dispel some of these oppressive practices that we that young people experience, right? And it was such a beautiful thing, right? And it goes back to, I'll use the Citibank analogy. It's like, what's in your wallet? Like, why are you doing what you do, right? Like, I don't do what I do just to be on any show or news, radio station. Like, you got to believe in what you do. And if you don't believe it, don't do it. Because what you want to do it's out there. You just got to, find what it is, right? Like,
Yes.
I've had many hats, many roles before. It's just a matter of this taking time, patience, and, working on your craft.
Right.
Kobe Bryant would say.
Oh, Kobe Bryant. Oh, he's been an interesting person in my life. Not personally, just in everyone's life, I guess, that paid attention.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the barbershop talk. And just as you're talking about all these things, I feel like I must have met you at the beginning of all of these things that you were doing, because I feel like I participated along the way as you're talking about it. It's like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I was there for that. Oh, I was there for that too.
Yeah.
And you've always been very inclusive to, like, I would assume, and I'm not trying to say that you think that we're like-minded, but I think that the like-mindedness helps us lean on one another to introduce these kinds of ideas into our society. And big up to Mike Truth, who is like my other partner in crime, who believes as we do. This is awesome. A master educator and a doctor. This is a great convo. Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate you. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, but barbershop talk. I was just recognizing that I was a part of that also as a facilitator at U of T for one of your barbershop talks.
Yeah, and thank you for that mention. And LA, respectfully, it was our event. Like, it's not my event. Like, no way, no how, right? And as I mentioned earlier, I encourage folks to start thinking through who's in your circle. LA Wade's in my circle. That's what it is. You know what I mean? And I know as much as she can depend on me, I can depend on her. And it's about how do we build community. That's my take. So for the barbershop talk specifically, that was a beautiful accident too. I had dreads at one point, and I went to cut my hair, and I sat in a barbershop after 9 years, because I was lining myself up. I didn't even go to the barber, right? And got an amazing conversation with the barbers and their clients who were cutting their hair. We were talking about sex. Well, they're having past relationships. Sorry.
Yes.
We're talking about the greatest conversation that people still have: who's a better basketball player, LeBron or Kobe? I just so happened to wear my LeBrons that day, so I was advocating for LeBron.
Oh my!
I ended up being in this barbershop for like 4 hours, and I already had my haircut. And I was sitting there. I was like, whoa! Like, I think there's an opportunity to actually make something of this, because Black men were talking.
Black men, period.
Talking, like, what?
Yes.
Every time I build a program, or every time I've gone to a program, I'm like, how come y'all ain't talking? What's going on, right? But that was the site, and I don't take any credit to being the first person to do a barbershop talk, because that's not true. There's folks out in Nova Scotia. Shout out to the folks in Nova Scotia doing some barbershop talks out there.
I think Brandon Hay did one too with the Black Daddies Club or something.
Brandon Hay, he's doing some fantastic work with Onyx. So shout out to them, right? Like, but it's a space. What we were able to do was create a space for us to start discussing some of the tensions that happen within our community, particularly among Black young boys or Black young men.
Yes.
It was an opportunity to start. And I think, LA, high five to us. We shook the tree enough to be like, listen, White Canada, y'all killed Andrew Luku, y'all killed Abdi Rahman Abdi. Come on.
Yeah.
Right? And we shook the tree enough we were able to be on CBC and talk about these things and be like, yo, wake up. Like, come on. Right? It doesn't mean that, Black men are the only one going through a social oppression. That's not what I'm saying. But when it comes to my lived experience, when it comes to what I'm seeing and things that, I feel there's a tension, particularly in our Black community, there's a need to start addressing and continue addressing some of the tensions within our Black community when it comes to Black young men's development.
Absolutely.
Carl James be talking about this. Tamari Katosa is talking about this. There's so many scholars, scholars who are talking about this topic, and we are not seeing Louis March. We can't forget about Louis March.
March is amazing.
You know?
There
So-
are subgroups like Danny Stone and that book he wrote with, I think it's called New Me or something like that, about a bunch of Black men who navigate their own experiences as fatherhood or of something like that. There's a lot of smaller groups of people talking about this, and unfortunately, the demographics in Canada keep Black people quite separated in silos. And social media has been a wonderful tool in amalgamating some of those gaps, and I hope that continues. I know it's 6:00, so I just want to thank you for allowing us to be reciprocal in our friendship and in our workship. And so that's been amazing. How can people reach you, and do you have any last thoughts?
Well, I think it's right there in the banner. Please visit my website or just shoot me an email, warrengclarke@gmail.com. Very simple. Don't forget the E of Clarke. People do that. Shout out to Dr. Vibe. Shout out to Eldon Holder Jr. Doing your thing. Appreciate the moment. Please look up these people up. People I've mentioned. If you're rewatching,
I was here last week, and he said, yes, he was my guest last week, and I told him you were going to be the guest, and he's like, "Oh, well, I'm just the appetizer."
No, Dr. Vibe is doing his thing. We can't forget about him. He's been doing his thing.
Absolutely not. Never.
Much appreciated. Keep building your community, folks. Thanks for having me, LA. Much appreciated. And I'm sure we will communicate with someone in the future.
Well, we'll see you on February 25th, and people can just go to my IG at This Is LA Wade or at Cocktails with LA, and go to my link tree, and you can register there through the link tree for the Black History event that Warren is throwing as well. What's that?
We are throwing.
One last shout out to Business Takeout, a not-for-profit social enterprise that promotes Black wealth and educates and empowers Black entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for joining the Cocktail Hour. I'm your host, LA Wade. Little by little, we're going to get there. See you next week.
Take care.
All right. Peace.
If you enjoy our programming and want to help support Black entrepreneurship, please donate today. www.businesstakeout.com/donate.